You ever wonder which small American tractors truly tested our patience? Well, we're going to count down the 10 worst small American tractors that were ever created. Famed for high failure rates and steep maintenance bills, these misguided machines left many farmers and homesteaders a bit frustrated. This is a trip down memory lane, recalling models that still spark debates in tractor circles. So let's roll up our sleeves, dig into the details, and see exactly why these machines earned a bad rep. Number 10 is the Shephard SD-3. The Shephard SD-3 emerged in the early 50s under the Shephard diesel brand from Hanover, Pennsylvania. While Shephard itself earned respect for innovative diesel engines at a time when many competitors stuck to gas power, the SD-3 tractor struggled to make a convincing case to American farmers. At about 30 horsepower, it was designed as a small utility tractor meant for tasks like plowing small acreage and running moderate equipment. On paper, it looked promising, a compact diesel tractor with enough grunt to handle typical chores pretty efficiently. But unfortunately, owners began discovering lots of issues. First, the diesel engine. Though advanced for the day, it was known for being picky about fuel quality and required consistent upkeep of the injection system to run smoothly. This finicky setup led to frequent stalling, especially if the tractor sat unused for even a short period. Second, parts availability was a persistent headache. As a smaller player in the market, Shephard couldn't match the distribution networks of giant manufacturers like International Harvester or John Deere, meaning long waits and higher prices for replacement components. Beyond the mechanical troubles, though, the SD-3 failed to offer comfort or versatility of competitors. Its ergonomics were considered outdated, with a cramped operator platform that made long hours in the seat less than pleasant. Over time, frustrated owners found themselves spending more on repairs and downtime than they'd ever budgeted. Although the SD-3 did introduce some farmers to the benefits of diesel, its persistent mechanical gremlins overshadowed the brand's ambitions. Many ended up trading their Shephard in for more reliable makes, turning the SD-3 into a cautionary tale about small manufacturers attempting to tackle diesel technology before market acceptance and company infrastructure were truly in place. Number 9 is the Leader Model D. Introduced in the mid-40s by the Leader Tractor Manufacturing Company in Auburn, Ohio, the Leader Model D aimed to carve out a niche as a small, affordable tractor for modest farm operations. Priced to undercut bigger brands, it featured a 4-cylinder gasoline engine that produced about 31 horsepower. Its simplified design targeted small acreage farmers who needed basic functionality without the hefty price tag of John Deere or Ford. Now, that strategy initially attracted some buyers, and Leader managed to place a handful of tractors across the Midwest. Trouble began once real-world farming conditions tested the Model D's durability. Complaints began about frequent overheating, with radiator capacity that seemed marginal at best. Breakdowns often stemmed from the limited quality components that were used to keep costs down. Transmissions were known to slip under load, and clutch replacements became a regular chore for some unlucky owners. Parts availability quickly emerged as another point of frustration. As a smaller operation, Leader's supply chain was erratic, forcing farmers to improvise repairs or wait weeks for shipments. Though the Model D was supposed to simplify maintenance, many discovered that the engineering shortcuts made routine servicing more complicated than was expected. The carburetor setup, for instance, needed constant fiddling to keep the engine running smoothly. Oil leaks were also commonplace, leaving owners to regularly top off fluids. Historically, the Model D didn't leave a huge footprint on the broader tractor industry, but it still represents a slice of 40s American ingenuity, one that fell short on execution. It served as a reminder that undercutting established brands requires more than just a lower price. Without robust testing, reliable part pipelines, and proven engineering, even the best intentions can stall. Now, while some collectors today admire the Model D for its rarity, its original reputation for frequent breakdowns and higher-than-expected maintenance costs remains a key part in its legacy. Number 8, the Silver King Model 42. Silver King tractors, built up the road from me in Plymouth, Ohio, came to market in the 1930s with a hopeful promise of innovation. By the time the Model 42 rolled out in the late 30s and continued into the early 40s, Silver King was trying to prove that smaller, nimble machines could handle a range of farm tasks. The Model 42 featured a 4-cylinder engine that put out about 25 horsepower and was lauded by some for its relatively speedy road gear. This made it handy for farmers who had to drive from field to field without the use of a truck or a trailer. But sadly, the Model 42 and its on-paper advantages were all overshadowed by an assortment of mechanical headaches. Chief among them was the steering design, which tended to wander on uneven terrain. Operators found themselves constantly correcting the wheel, especially when pulling ground-engaging implements. The tractor also had a relatively high center of gravity, making it prone to feeling unstable on slopes. In an era when safety features were minimal, that trait made some owners feel a bit uneasy. Adding to the frustration, Silver King's small production volumes meant parts were neither widely available nor particularly affordable. Breakdowns can put a farm operation behind schedule for weeks, as local dealers struggle to source the correct components. The Model 42 also developed a reputation for wearing out its clutch faster than competing brands, likely due to its somewhat underbuilt drivetrain that had trouble coping with heavier loads. Culturally, Silver King still holds nostalgia for certain collectors who appreciate the brand's ambition and distinctive styling. However, for the average farmer back in the day, the Model 42's challenges in stability, steering, and maintenance overshadowed any benefits of its compact size and faster transport speed. Over time, stiff competition from larger companies and the tractor's finicky nature led to Silver King's downfall. While a rare sight now, the Model 42 is remembered as a lesson in how design flaws can trump the most promising specifications. Number 7. The David Bradley Tri-Trac. Now, Sears, Roebuck & Company sold a variety of farm and garden equipment under the David Bradley name, attempting to capture the market for small-scale farming and homestead operations. In 1953, they introduced the Tri-Trac, a curious little machine with a single front wheel and 2 rear drive wheels. Intended primarily for cultivating and light-duty tasks on small plots. The concept was that the single wheel up front would enhance maneuverability in tight rows. While the Tri-Trac did offer excellent visibility for row crop work, since that single wheel let the operator see the row directly in front, it quickly proved underwhelming in real-world conditions. Its small gasoline engine, rated about 5.75 horsepower, was easily bogged down by heavier soils or slopes, and operators found themselves stopping frequently to let the engine catch up. Another problem was traction. With minimal weight over the single front wheel and limited design approach to the rear axle, the Tri-Trac struggled to maintain grip when pulling implements. What was supposed to be nimble often became stuck at the slightest challenge. Maintenance headaches also came pretty quickly. Replacement parts had to be ordered through Sears catalogs, and not all local Sears stores stocked the items that owners needed. Some parts turned out to be surprisingly effective for such a small tractor, negating the initial budget-friendly allure. The unique setup of the drivetrain meant that owners sometimes had trouble finding mechanics that were familiar with the Tri-Trac's quirks. Culturally, the Tri-Trac stands out as an odd example of mid-century American retail experimentation. Sears tried to bring innovative machinery to small-scale farmers just as the market was consolidating around more robust multi-purpose tractors. Its significance lies in showing how retail brands struggled against specialized manufacturers. Yet, for those who actually used it, the Tri-Trac was more novelty than dependable workhorse, sealing its reputation as a high-maintenance footnote in the story of American small tractors. Number 6. The Oliver 1250. The Oliver 1250, produced in the late 1960s under the White Motor Corporation umbrella, was part of Oliver's attempt to branch into the compact tractor market. Instead of building the machine entirely in-house, Oliver contracted with Fiat of Italy to supply the tractor's core design. This international collaboration aimed to compete with other small utility tractors that were increasingly popular on American farms for chores like mowing, light tillage, and loader work. Now, while the 1250's four-cylinder diesel engine gave owners decent fuel economy for a modest task, the tractor became notorious for complicated maintenance procedures that combined Oliver's branding with foreign-sourced components. Fiat's engineering choices sometimes clashed with what American mechanics were used to seeing, so routine jobs like setting valve lash or servicing the hydraulic pump often turned into head-scratching ordeals. Parts interchangeability was pretty minimal. If you needed a replacement, you had to track down an Oliver dealer with direct ties to overseas suppliers, leading to frequent delays and inflated prices. Another weak spot was the electrical system. Reports of failing starters and inconsistent charging circuits were pretty common, especially after a few seasons of wear and tear. Because of the dual influence, American brand name, European design, owners didn't know whether to search for Oliver parts or Fiat part numbers. The confusion added an extra layer of inconvenience in an era before the internet simplified cross-referencing. Historically, the 1250 symbolizes the larger trend of American companies that were trying to source smaller tractors from established overseas manufacturers, rather than go ahead and develop them from scratch. Now, while the concept made sense on paper, capitalizing on Europe's expertise in compact designs, it failed to gain the loyalty of U.S. customers who valued straightforward, domestically supported equipment. Now, over time, the Oliver 1250's quirky blend of engineering and sporadic reliability overshadowed its potential efficiency benefits, marking it as a cautionary tale for brand partnerships that lack a fully synchronized supply chain. Number 5 is the Co-op E3. Marketed through local farm co-ops and built primarily by Cockshut in Canada, the Co-op E-Series attempted to offer a cost-effective solution for small to mid-sized farms. The Co-op E3, introduced in the late 40s, was essentially a rebranded Cockshut 30, sporting around 30 horsepower from a 4-cylinder engine. Because it carried the Co-op badge in many regions from the U.S., farmers sometimes assumed it was a fully homegrown product, when in reality, it was closely tied to Canadian manufacturing lines. Now, although the E3 found its share of loyal fans, numerous owners encountered persistent issues, especially with the transmission and clutch assemblies. Some pointed to inadequate gear materials that wore prematurely under rigorous field work, requiring expensive overhauls sooner than one would expect. Hydraulic systems also caused headaches. Leaks and inconsistent lift performance were fairly common, a problem that Cockshut-based designs struggled with in earlier iterations. Another thorn was the limited dealer network. Because the tractor was sold under the Co-op banner, buyers relied heavily on local cooperative associations for parts and service. In areas without a strong Cockshut or Co-op presence, routine repairs turned into logistical challenges that involved special orders or long drives to distant dealerships. If the local Co-op went under or shifted focus, E3 owners had to fend for themselves. From an industry perspective, the Co-op E3 is an interesting example of brand partnerships that were aimed at giving smaller farm communities a more direct connection to equipment sales. In practice, it proved that simply slapping a familiar badge on a foreign or semi-foreign design, it wasn't enough. Without robust after-sales support and proven components, tractors like the E3 languish with reputations for higher maintenance costs. While some folks still praise the E3's economical fuel consumption and straightforward engine, the frequent mechanical setbacks and tricky parts supply relegated it to the lower tiers of dependable, small American tractors. Number 4 is the Farmall 460. International Harvester's Farmall line once dominated the American tractor market. By the late 50s, though, the company was locked in fierce competition with John Deere and other emerging brands. The Farmall 460 arrived in 1958 with roughly 47 horsepower. Positioned as a mid-sized row crop tractor that could also handle utility chores. Now, on paper, it looked like a versatile option, with a new 6-cylinder engine configuration to replace older 4-cylinder designs. Early on, however, the 460 developed a serious reputation problem: final drive failures. Stories circulated of the tractor's rear end giving out under heavy load. These failures weren't just inconvenient, they were catastrophic enough to require expensive repairs or complete replacement of the final drive assembly. IH initially tried minor fixes, but the issues persisted. Eventually, the company had to orchestrate a major recall and retrofit program, costing them dearly in both money and brand credibility. Farmer loyalty, built up by years of iconic models like the Farmall H and M, took a severe hit. Compounding the final drive fiasco were repeated complaints about the torque amplifier. When the torque amplifier malfunctioned, it left operators either slipping in higher gears or losing power in the lower ranges. Repairs required specialized training, so not every local mechanic could handle it effectively. Downtime added up, and so did the costs. From a historical standpoint, the Farmall 460 underscores how a single engineering misstep can tarnish even the most venerable brand name. Though International Harvester would go on to fix many of its flaws, the damage of its reputation contributed to the market shift of the 1960s and 70s, when competing brands gained ground. Collectors today may admire the 460 styling and appreciate the later improvements, but it remains a cautionary emblem of how rushed product development can lead to a high-maintenance, failure-prone machine. Number 3 is the John Deere 1010. John Deere's 1010 was part of the new generation of tractors introduced in 1960. A series meant to herald a leap forward in performance and comfort. Slotted around 30 horsepower, the 1010 was intended for small farms and utility tasks like mowing, light cultivation, and loader work. Expectations were high. John Deere poured resources into modernizing its lineup, moving away from the traditional 2-cylinder Johnny Popper engines to more advanced 4-cylinder designs. Yet the 1010 ended up being a surprising blemish on Deere's record. Chief among the complaints was the engine's poor torque output relative to its horsepower rating. Furthermore, the tractor's sleeve deck system, where the cylinders were part of a removable deck, proved problematic. If anything went wrong in the cylinder bores, the entire assembly had to be serviced or replaced, leading to unexpectedly high repair costs. The tractor's hydraulic system wasn't much better. Leaks and inconsistent pressure, they were not uncommon. forcing operators to babysit fluid levels and watch for failing seals. Now, while John Deere prided itself on dealer support, the 1010's frequent breakdowns still tested even the best networks. Some mechanics found the new engine design unintuitive compared to the straightforward two-cylinder setups that they were used to. As negative word spread, many prospective buyers chose to invest in other John Deere models or look elsewhere entirely. Now, in larger context, the 1010 struggles revealed that even a powerhouse like John Deere couldn't guarantee success simply by introducing new technology. The model also served as a setup for redemption when Deere refined the line for later releases like the 1020 and beyond, which fared much better. Ultimately, though, the 1010 remains a cautionary tale. Even legendary brands can stumble by releasing equipment that doesn't align with users' practical needs or expectations. Number 2, the John Deere 2010. Launched alongside the 1010, the 2010 was supposed to be a slightly more powerful sibling, offering about 46 horsepower. Deere's marketing pitched it as an all-around improvement, more muscle, better hydraulics, and a newly designed engine that would carry farms confidently into a new decade. Yet many owners and industry experts now labeled the 2010 as one of the worst tractors ever produced by John Deere, if not the worst outright. One of the primary gripes was the engine's wet sleeve design. Deere experimented with new materials and configurations, but the end result was an engine that was prone to sleeve cavitation and coolant leaks. Once coolant started mixing with oil, catastrophic wear followed if the problem went unnoticed. Even a minor engine issue could escalate into a major rebuild because the 2010 service procedures were more complex than similar models from competitors. And then there was the hydraulic system, which shared many of the 1010's woes but on a grander scale. Operators complained about slow or uneven lifting of implements, along with frequent seal failures. Add in a transmission that sometimes refused to shift smoothly under load, and you had a formula for constant maintenance headaches. Naturally, parts and services existed within John Deere's extensive dealer network, but the frequency of repairs left many owners a bit bitter. Over time, the 2010 became emblematic of how not to design a small tractor. Even Deere loyalists, who typically swore by the brand's reliability, found it hard to defend. Some have jokingly claimed that the 2010 name signified $20 in parts and 10 hours of labor for every repair session. But truth be told, the 2010's impact on Deere's reputation was tangible, pushing the company to refine future models significantly. It stands as a high-profile reminder that brand legacy can be overshadowed by one ill-fated release, especially when it comes to demanding farm work when reliability is non-negotiable. Number 1 is the Ford 6000. Unveiled in 1961 with a lot of fanfare, the Ford 6000 was meant to replace the earlier Fordsons and build on the success of the widely popular Ford N-Series. Boasting over 60 horsepower, it stretched the definition of small tractor for some. But it still fit into a utility role for many medium-sized farms. Perhaps the most anticipated feature was the Selecto-Speed transmission, an innovative power shift system that allowed shifting on the go without depressing a clutch pedal. Unfortunately, the 6000 went down in history as one of Ford's biggest missteps. Immediately after release, reports of the Selecto-Speed transmission failing under routine conditions started rolling in. Farmers found themselves stuck in gear, slipping while towing implements, or hearing unsettling grinding noises that signaled imminent breakdown. Now, in some cases, the entire transmission had to be replaced, an expensive ordeal that Ford hadn't prepared for in terms of parts inventory or service training. The problems were so extensive that Ford orchestrated an unprecedented recall of all the early 6000s, effectively rebuilding them under a program that was jokingly referred to by insiders as the Ford 6000 Red Tiger conversion. This massive corrective effort cost Ford significant money and dealer goodwill. Even after the recall, many owners never regained confidence, and word spread like wildfire that the 6000 was a gamble at best. Now, beyond the transmission, the tractor also had quirks in its hydraulic system and a somewhat under-engineered rear end, both of which demanded more maintenance than farmers expected from a new generation Ford. Now, from a cultural standpoint, the 6000's failure was especially shocking because Ford had long been a symbol of reliability in the ag world, dating back to the legendary 9N, 2N, and 8N models. Farmers who trusted the brand felt a bit betrayed, and Ford's image suffered. Now, although subsequent iterations and fixes made the 6000 more stable, the damage, it was already done. Its legacy endures as a prime example of how ambitious engineering, if not thoroughly tested, can become a manufacturer's worst nightmare. Now, we've traveled through a rough patch of tractor history, spotlighting machines that, despite the best intentions, cause more headaches than harvests. Hey, jokes aside, these 10 models remind us that even trusted brands can stumble when innovation outpaces reliable design. And if you've owned or operated any of these lemons, share your story below. We hope you found the video helpful and maybe a bit nostalgic as we revisited the past. For more straightforward, authoritative breakdowns on farming gear and vintage machinery, be sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Let's keep the stories alive and keep learning from yesterday's mistakes.